What do the following names have in common? Ariana Grande, Britney Spears, Ashton Kutcher, Lucy Liu, Alex Rodriguez, Naomi Campbell, Demi Moore, Paris Hilton, Donna Karan, Roseanne, Elizabeth Taylor, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Madonna. So what do all of these names have in common? Well, you probably guessed it. According to mainstream media at least, they all have some encounter with the wisdom of Kabbalah. Let me first of all assure you that this is not a session about Hollywood or about celebrities. It's not a session about fame or about money. It is going to be a session about authentic Kabbalah, which is a spiritual and scientific method. I know those two things don't always go together, but in the wisdom of Kabbalah they do. So it's a spiritual and scientific method of how to tap in to hidden forces that are actually all around us. So in this session, I'll explain briefly what the wisdom of Kabbalah is, where it originated, and why so many people today, yes, including Hollywood celebrities, are interested and are studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. Let's get into it. Okay, hello again, I'm Gil Shear. This is Kabbalah Explained Simply, and today's session we're going to be talking about why is everyone, including Hollywood celebrities, why are they all attracted to the wisdom of Kabbalah today? What is happening today? So, to get started, let's start off with answering a simple question: what is Kabbalah? So, for that, I've prepared a presentation. Let me just open it. And here it is. Okay, so what is Kabbalah? Is it ancient Jewish mysticism, like many people today say it is? Is it pop, new age? Is it a secret cult? So the answers are no, no, and no. It's not ancient Jewish mysticism, although it is ancient. But it's not Jewish. It actually predates Judaism. So many people say that it's ancient Jewish mysticism. They must not know the origin of the wisdom of Kabbalah. It goes way before Judaism. Judaism is actually based on the wisdom of Kabbalah. So since we know it's ancient, we know it's not New Age, because it's not new from this age. It's from a while ago. And it's not secret because so many people today are studying it, and it's open here on YouTube Live. So it's definitely not secret, and it's definitely not a cult. It's open to everyone. The word Kabbalah, actually, it means in Hebrew, Kabbalah in Hebrew means reception. It actually also means receipt. So if you go to a store and you get a Kabbalah, then it means you got a receipt. The word Kabbalah simply means reception. So the question is, reception of what? It's an entire method of reception. Well, to understand what the method of reception is talking about, you need to understand the potential of what there is to receive. So the wisdom of Kabbalah, the method of Kabbalah, or the science of Kabbalah, however you want to call it, it's open to anyone that has a desire. A desire for what? For what I'm going to say over this session. And it basically provides you with a tool that enables you to tap in to hidden forces of reality. Yes, there are hidden forces in reality. And it's not that far-fetched, If you went to the 16th century or early 17th century and you would talk about bacteria or germs, people would have no idea what you're talking about. They'd think you're imagining or you're talking about some mysticism. And then in the 17th century, with the development of microscopes, they were able to actually see these small, tiny living beings, these germs. And in the 19th century, if you would tell someone that you could look through their body and see their bones, they would think you're crazy, or that you're a witch, or that you're, again, engaging in mysticism. But in fact, it's simply X-rays that existed since the beginning of time, since they're part of the electromagnetic spectrum, just like visible light. Only X-rays are not visible, at least without a machine. And in the 19th century, right at the end of it, it was discovered. And suddenly you can see things you didn't see before. So that's the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's not mysticism, it's not magic, it's not some secret voodoo, whatever. It's a simple, pure science that was developed by a series of people, and we'll get to that too. And they simply found how to develop an internal tool that enables you to interact with forces in reality, forces that are around us all the time, and even forces we interact with all the time. Only we're not interacting with them correctly because we don't understand what they are and how they work. So it's like gravity. You know gravity, so you're not going to walk off a cliff. But if you did not know gravity, then you might unfortunately walk off a cliff and get the result. So the wisdom of Kabbalah is a method that enables you to develop a tool to tap into these hidden forces of reality. That's all it is. It's a science. It was discovered by Kabbalists, who were the scientists that researched this method, did experimentation, and they described their findings in their writings over thousands of years. And this method is available today to anyone that has a desire to reveal these hidden forces. Okay, so that is briefly what is the wisdom of Kabbalah. Let's keep going and let's talk a little bit about the origin of Kabbalah. Where did it all start? So let's go back a few thousands of years ago, almost 6,000 years ago, to a person named Adam. So Adam lived 5,780 years ago, and he was actually the first Kabbalist. What does it mean that he was the first Kabbalist? He was a regular person, just like you and me. And just like you and me, Adam asked meaningful questions. He looked around him and he felt that what he sees is not the whole picture. And that inner feeling in him, it pushed him to search for these forces. And from his search, he developed an internal tool that enabled him to interact with these forces. Now what he found, he wrote in a book. The book is called Raziel the Angel. There's a lot of misconceptions about it, that it's a book that you can supposedly create different amulets from. Even here we see the word in Hebrew, kameh, which means amulet, although of course he's not talking a single word about anything in this world on the material level. He's simply describing the findings of that system that he discovered. What is this system? It's a system of souls, of a collective soul to be precise. So Raziel the Angel is the first writing of that spiritual system, almost 6,000 years ago. Let's go a little bit forward to Abraham. There were Kabbalists in between, but I'm going to go through a few of the main Kabbalists that had significant impact in the development of the method of Kabbalah from the beginning of it until our day. So the next one, Abraham, lived approximately 3,800 years ago. He wrote the very well-known Book of Creation, also called Sefer HaYetzirah. In that book, Abraham too, he discovered the same structure as Adam, the same structure of the 10 Sefirot. He was able to replicate the same experimentation that Adam went through, and he redid these experiments, and he reached the same results. That's why we call the wisdom of Kabbalah a science, although the tool you need for it is internal, not external, but it's precise, and it has measurements, and you can quantify, and you can replicate it. So Abraham wrote the Book of Creation, and he described the structure of the 10 Sefirot. Actually, let's talk a little bit more about Abraham, because that whole story is interesting. He lived in a time a little bit like today, in ancient Mesopotamia. And at that time, like today, there was an eruption of human desire. Trade and financial systems and social systems evolved. And with that eruption of the development of the human desire, Abraham, who was the son of an idol worshipper, just like Adam, he felt that there has to be something more to reality. There has to be something more than the idols that he sold in his father's store. And we know what he did. He broke the idols and he searched for that same thing that Adam searched for, and likely the same thing that you might be searching for. And he found it. And what he found the same system of 10 Sefirot. Today, sometimes we call it the Tree of Life. And his finding, he was so inspired by this finding that he decided to share it with everyone who wants to know this as well. So what did he do? He opened his tent. It says he opened 4 directions, meaning to everyone that wanted to find those hidden forces of reality. And those people that wanted to find these hidden forces of reality, they came to Abraham to study. Later on, that group was called Israel. Later on, that emerged into the Jewish religion. But it started from a Kabbalist. It started from the wisdom of Kabbalah. And by the way, that's the root of the people of Israel, is this search for this hidden layer of reality. And that's why today this method is open to anyone, not just people who were born to a Jewish mother, etc., like you might hear other people say. No, this method is open to anyone, just like in the time of Abraham, to anyone that has a desire to find these forces in reality, in nature. So that was Abraham. Let's keep going. Let me just do a quick check-in to see that everything is going smoothly. Okay. It looks like no complaints. Okay, good. Let's continue then. All right, so that was Abraham. And moving on, a little bit later on, a few hundreds of years, to another Kabbalist, Moses. Moses too was a Kabbalist. He too discovered the hidden forces of nature. He grew up in Egypt under Pharaoh, which is an interesting story in and of itself, but we won't go into that now. And he wrote the top-selling book of all times, not Harry Potter. He wrote, obviously, the Bible. And the Bible, even though I would say similar to Raziel the Angel, the Bible is also one of the most misinterpreted books ever written. Why is it misinterpreted? Because the Bible and all of these Kabbalistic texts are actually written in a secret language. They're written in code. And in order to understand the true meaning of these words, of these books, then you need to also have this internal device developed in order to attain what these words actually mean. So it's written in a secret language called the language of roots and branches, which, again, not the topic of today's lesson. You can check out a session called The Secret Language of the Bible. Maybe Rachel can post a link in the chats right now. And this language basically means that every word has its root and its branch. And the branch is how it's realized in this world. And its root is the spiritual root of that object, of that energy. So all of these writings are talking only about the spiritual forces, about the energy behind the forces of this world. So that was Moses, another great Kabbalist. Let's keep going down the line. About 1400 years later, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the author of the Book of Zohar, although you might find in other places, especially academia, that the Book of Zohar is said to be written by Rabbi Moshe de Leon in the 12th century, and that's according to academic findings, but according to Kabbalists who have passed down this method over the last 6,000 years, this book was written 1800 years ago by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It was distributed by Rabbi Moshe de Leon around 12th century, but he was not the author of that book. He was the distributor of it. So the Book of Zohar, you know the Book of Zohar. I think there's not much to add about it. If you want to, again, delve into a full session about the Book of Zohar, then we did a Zohar reading a couple of weeks ago, and Rachel will post the link and you can check it out. And we also did a few more sessions about the Zohar, the history of it as well. So if you just type in to YouTube the Zohar, Kabbalah Explained Simply, then you'll find all the sessions we did about it. Now, the beautiful thing about the book of Zohar is that it was written in a 10. What's a 10? A 10 is a group of 10 people, sometimes called a minyan. And that was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai with his students. And together they formed this system called a 10 or a minyan. And what's special about this system is through the connections between them, they equalized, they simulated the forces of connection in the spiritual worlds. And that's why this book is so powerful, because it's not written by one person, but it's written by a minyan, which together between them that they discovered these incredible spiritual forces. That's also why if you read the book of Zohar, and again you can check out the session from a couple of weeks ago where we read it together, you'll find that it's an emotional guitar. It hits these strings in the heart that awaken emotion that it's hard to know where it comes from. Why? But that's why. It's because it was written in a group of 10, in this spiritual structure called a minyan. So that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Zohar was a significant step in the spread of the wisdom of Kabbalah. It was actually supposed to be revealed much later on, around the 16th century, but it was revealed earlier, around the 12th, and distributed, but we won't get into that now. Let's keep going and see how the wisdom of Kabbalah, the Kabbalists, brought this method to what it is today. So next Kabbalist in line, the Ari. So the Ari, if you don't know him by name, I'm sure you know him by his writings, because he coined the term Tree of Life, Etz Chaim. Tree of Life, it is the name of his book. It's also today the name associated with this structure that you're seeing on the screen here. That over there, yes, this structure, which is a structure of 10 Sefirot, 10 spiritual forces, which are Keter, Chochmah, Binah, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. And the Ari, he wrote in detail about this structure. It's the first time that this method was actually suited for the masses. Until the Ari, the method was not suited for the masses, and that is also why it'll be very difficult for you if you try and read the Book of Creation, Raziel the Angel, even the Bible. If you try and read it with the goal to tap into its spiritual forces, it'll be very difficult because it's very confusing, because it seems like it's talking about one thing, but in fact it's talking about something very different. And the Ari, this is the first time that he wrote the book, The Tree of Life, in the language of Kabbalah. He explained the structure of the spiritual worlds. So this, you could say, is the first detailed manual of the spiritual worlds by, again, a scientist who discovered, who replicated the same methods as previous Kabbalists, developed that inner tool, replicated the experimentation, found the same structure, and here he described it in a way that is first time suited for all of humanity, actually. And these writings of his, Etz Chaim, the Tree of Life, were actually the beginning of the last phase of human development. Human development as it is today, not the end, gone. Not that, but the beginning of something new. Okay, next in line, and we'll stop for questions in a few minutes. Next and last in this line, in this chain, is Baal HaSulam. So Baal HaSulam died in the last century. He wrote the book Talmud Eser Sefirot, the study of the 10 Sefirot, which is commentary on the writings of the Ari, on the writings of the Tree of Life. So Baal HaSulam took the Ari's writings, took the Tree of Life, and he made it even more accessible for our generation specifically. He wrote it in over 3,000 pages of interpretations, and he explained everything that was unclear there, and he broke it down and he simplified it. He did the same on the Rashbi, on the commentary. He wrote the commentary for the Book of Zohar. There are a few types of commentaries for the Book of Zohar, but Baal HaSulam's commentary is the true, authentic commentary for the Book of Zohar. He wrote it according to that same method that the Ari and his students wrote it by, and Rashbi and his students wrote it by, and later on the Ari, etc. He also had a special connection, Baal HaSulam had a special connection to the Ari and to Rashbi. I'll tell you in a few seconds what that connection is. So basically, his name Baal HaSulam, that's not his real name is Yehuda Ashlag, but he was named Baal HaSulam because Sulam in Hebrew means ladder, and Baal HaSulam means the owner of the ladder. And he was given this name because he actually built a ladder to discover these spiritual forces, a ladder to develop this internal spiritual tool that through his method it can be followed by anyone who wants to discover this method, and it's possible to do that through this ladder of Baal HaSulam. So what's the connection between all these Kabbalists? If you've seen our session Tree of Life, then you probably know. It's quite fascinating. All these Kabbalists are the same soul, the same method, but different people. Meaning the same soul reincarnated from Adam to Abraham, to Moses, to Rashbi, to the Ari, to Baal HaSulam. The same soul, the same, you could say, part of the general system. That's what a soul is. And that same soul, it reincarnated through these different personalities over time, and every time it made this method and wisdom more and more accessible based on the development of that same generation. So from Raziel the Angel from Adam's Raziel the Angel to Abraham's Book of Creation, Moses, the Bible, Rashbi, the Zohar, Ari, Etz Chaim, Tree of Life, and Baal HaSulam, who interpreted these writings. And Baal HaSulam, that's why Baal HaSulam is the recommended commentary today to the Wisdom of Kabbalah, is because he wrote it from the general, you could say, desire, the general deficit of this generation specifically. And that's why the writings of all the previous Kabbalists can be best understood through the prisma that Baal HaSulam added in his commentary. So that was the brief history of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. Maybe I'll just add that today we teach Kabbalah according to the method of Baal HaSulam, which we got it from Baal HaSulam's son and successor, Rabash, Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag. And he took Baal HaSulam's method and he added another element to it, a social element of social spiritual application, you could say. And his student and successor, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman, he was the student and successor of Rabash, and he's my teacher, and possibly yours as well. And he took this method and he made it even more accessible to everyone in the world. Everyone, regardless of religion, gender, nationality, location. Anyone that wants to study this method today can approach it in easy and simple words through the teachings of Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman, and also teachings here in Kabbalah Info, in Kabu, are actually based on the teachings of all of these Kabbalists with the interpretation and commentary of Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman. So that was the brief history of Kabbalah from when it originated until where we are today. Okay, I'm going to take a quick pause and I'm going to take a look at some questions. Let's see. Where's my question document? No. 1 second. Here it is. Okay. A question: were other prophets also Kabbalists? Yes, many prophets were Kabbalists. I don't know which prophets you're referring to, but I'll give some examples of other people who were Kabbalists. All of the prophets in the prophets, there's, the Bible, there's the Torah, the Pentateuch, and then there's Nevi'im, the prophets, and then there's Ketuvim, the writings. So all the prophets in that chapter are called prophets. Yes, they were Kabbalists. Any person that attained this method is considered a Kabbalist, because they followed the same guidelines of previous Kabbalists, and they discovered the same structure and the same system, and they each maybe described it. Ramchal was a Kabbalist, Rambam was a Kabbalist, Maimonides, Rambam, Rashash was a Kabbalist, Noah was a Kabbalist. Kabbalah simply means that he had spiritual attainment. He was in touch with these forces of nature. Actually, there were times that all of the people of Israel, meaning that same group that originated from Abraham, they were all Kabbalists, because they were all in contact with a hidden force of nature. And that was at the time of the first and second temple. And from the destruction of the temples, they dropped their spiritual degree, they lost it, and they went into a state called exile for 2,000 years. And today is humanity's time, actually, not just one single group, but all of humanity. It is time to come out of this exile. Okay, let's see. Okay, there's a question from Patricia. Will that soul arrive as, I guess, the Messiah that Judaism is waiting for? Great question. In fact, the Messiah is not a person. It's not some, white bearded man with white gown riding on a donkey. No, the Messiah is a force, because the word Messiah comes from the Hebrew word Mashiach, which comes from the word moshech, to pull. And that's exactly what this force called Messiah is. It's a force that is destined to pull all of humanity out of its current state simply to a higher level of evolution. And that is this force called Messiah. Let's see. Okay, a question from Janek. Is there commentary on Raziel the Angel and the Tree of Life? In other words, is it possible for us to understand these books? Raziel the Angel, no. There is no Baal HaSulam commentary on that. So, therefore, you can take a look at it. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you. Good or bad, it's simply a book in code. You can take a look at it just for interest, but there isn't much spiritual benefit in studying from it. The Tree of Life, the Ari, absolutely. I study it with Dr. Michael Laitman, at some periods even daily, and we study it through Baal HaSulam's study of the 10 Sefirot, which is the commentary together with the writings of the Ari in one book. So we read the Ari, Tree of Life, and then we read Baal HaSulam's commentary on it, and that gives the entire picture. So yes, absolutely. You can even find these books in our bookstore, kabbalahbooks.info. Maybe Rachel can post a link to that. Okay. There's a lot of great questions here that I would actually love to answer, but I don't think we'll have time today. Maybe I'll just give a kind of a brief touch upon them. To Be Conscious is asking, please tell us about Abraham and the break from Babylon. That's a great question, and it's actually a great story, because it's not just a story, it's an explanation of how this entire method evolved, and the way it evolved, it prepared all of humanity actually to be ready to receive this method. I'm just trying to think of how to explain that in 2 minutes. Okay, let me try. So Abraham, he opened his tents to teach everyone, kind of opened his own Kabbalah, Kabbalah the original, and the group that came to study from him were called Israel. Why were they called Israel? Simply based on their desire, which comes from the Hebrew word yashar, straight, El, to this creator, to this force of nature. And that was the foundation of this group. That was the first group to reach contact with this upper force. Now, you know how I told you about the destruction of the temple, exile, etc. The exile, of course, it's all purposeful and it's all leading to higher levels of evolution, even though sometimes it's unclear, but think of it like a fruit growing on a tree. It goes through all kinds of processes until it becomes ripe and tasty. And beforehand, it can even be bitter and poisonous, that same fruit, before it's ripe. So that same group, when it dispersed into exile, it was part of a process of integration of desires between that group that already had a desire and attained spirituality and lost it, and the rest of the world. And that mingling, that integration, it basically generated a spark in all of humanity, preparing it specifically for our times today. So that was in a nutshell, but maybe we'll do a separate session about that. Okay, great. Let's take a look at another one. Another one, which is also a good question, but I'll answer it briefly, and maybe we'll do a session about that. Can you compare Kabbalah with Hasidic Judaism? Yes, I absolutely can. So to understand Hasidic Judaism, you need to understand how Kabbalah evolved. So the founders of Hasidism, they were Kabbalists, and they developed Hasidism in a time where the wisdom of Kabbalah was still concealed. Humanity was not prepared, and they developed a method similar to how Judaism evolved. And Hasidism is based on Kabbalistic principles, but through external behavior. So Hasidism has a lot of Kabbalistic elements in it. It's based on the wisdom of Kabbalah, but it was prepared for a time and a people that were not yet ready for a spiritual awakening. But it was given as a method to maintain a certain level of connection to the spiritual worlds, on a level that's called holy still. Still being the lowest level, still vegetative, animate, speaking, and holy still is the lowest level. It's a still, but within that level, then this method, Hasidism and Judaism, they maintained people that had that higher level of attainment and lost it. They kept them on the lowest level called holy still. Okay, let's keep going. Last question. Who is Lucifer according to the wisdom of Kabbalah? So, Lucifer in pop culture is, it's a TV show, it's the devil, it's all kinds of things. According to the wisdom of Kabbalah, Lucifer and other such forces are simply forces that exist within a person. All these forces that at the end, just like you have in your body, you have all kinds of mechanisms, and you have different kinds of bacteria, some that are positive, some that are negative, and you need all of this in order to maintain balance. So the internal structure of the soul is the same. There are all kinds of spiritual forces which are called Lucifer, and are called this, and are called that, and are called angels. Actually, angels are in fact forces, and we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, let's keep going. Let's move on to the next part of why is Kabbalah becoming so popular today, right? Because, the whole thing we started with Hollywood, of course, that was just kind of to get you maybe interested. Some of you not. Actually, I got some emails after we sent out the announcement about the session. Why are you guys doing a session about Hollywood and about fame? We came to find spirituality for other reasons. So, I responded, don't worry, we're not going to be talking about Hollywood or fame, but only the interest in why so many people and so many celebrities that seemingly have everything. And it's quite interesting, because the interest in all these people, that we mentioned before that study Kabbalah today, you might think they have everything. They have, fame and power and money, and people love them, and they're famous, and they have everything. What is pushing them to search for something to find a different level of fulfillment? And that's actually quite interesting. And we'll touch upon that right now. So moving on to part 3, from secret method to mainstream. So what's actually happening here? What happening is an incredible evolutionary process. Simple evolution. Of what? Of the human desire. So if you look at the human desire, examine it over since Homo sapiens, emerged about 200,000 years ago, then you can also see how the desires themselves evolved, right? The desires evolved from simple animalistic desires, for food, for sex, for family, and then hundreds of thousands of years later, actually until the time of Babylon, where there was an eruption of that desire, and that's when the new social desires started coming into play, like desires for power and for knowledge and for money. They started evolving, and it's a higher level of evolution of that human desire. And what's it leading to, right? Because if things are evolving, okay, so we passed, animalistic desires, and we continued to social desires, so what's next? So there is actually a new evolutionary state, and it can also be explained through evolutionary biology. And I prepared a clip for you because I already did a video on that, and in 4 minutes you'll get what I think is a fascinating overview of evolution, and we can learn a lot. If we take a look at this process, it suddenly becomes obvious what is supposed to happen next, and why this method it went from secret to mainstream, to Hollywood, to pop culture, to everyone. So let's take a look at this clip. This clip is part of a course that I made, a course that we have on Kabbalah. It's called Kabbalah and the Science of Human Emergence. Maybe I'll tell you just briefly what emergence is. So emergence is when pieces join together and they create something that is higher than the individuals that built it. And not only that, they create something that could not have been predicted by looking at the parts. And there are simple examples of that. If you look at atoms have certain qualities, but if you connect atoms together, they form molecules. But if you look at a molecule, you won't find the simple qualities of the atom in the molecule. So that means something new emerged from the connection of these atoms. And the same thing with molecules. When they connect together and they form life, then something new emerges. And this life cannot be found in a molecule. Even though scientists are trying to do that, they have not yet succeeded. So emergence is a phenomena of things that connect, and from a certain type of connection, they form a higher entity. And this has been happening for over 4 billion years. And it's taking us somewhere. So let's take a quick look, 4-minute clip, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. 3.8 billion years ago, something incredible happened. A rock came to life. That was our beginning. No one knows exactly how or where life emerged, just that it did. So what can almost 4 billion years of evolution teach us about the next level of human development? When we look around us, we see life everywhere. Trees, people, animals, insects, plants. The vast complexity of life around us started from very simple life forms. And if we carefully observe the stages of evolution and emergence, we might be able to identify a pattern that can teach us something about the emergence of mankind as well. So let's go back 3.8 billion years ago to the first life form known to us. It was a single-celled organism called prokaryotes. Back then, they were considered super complex beings, in comparison to the rocks and minerals. Now, there were different types of these cells, each doing different things. For example, one type was a bacterial cell that converted solar energy. Another cell used oxygen to break down materials like sugar. Each cell had its unique abilities and made a unique contribution to maintain balance in its ecosystem. However, they would also fight for resources, and this went on for like 1 billion years until something amazing happened. The different types of cells reached a conclusion that they're better off sharing resources and responsibilities. Now, at first, it was just basic forms of collaboration. Give me this, take that. But then a whole new level of collaboration emerged, and this changed everything. The cells started behaving like a single organism, as if they shared a collective consciousness.
And when that happened, bam! A new level of life had emerged. That process happened again and again, leading to the evolution of the nucleated cell, about 2.1 billion years ago. That was a big deal. We're talking about a cell that's 1,000 times bigger and much more complex. It's like comparing a house to a huge city. Now, these nucleated cells, they carry incredible complexity. They have about 30,000 recycling centers that take male functioning proteins and turn them to useful amino acids. They have about 1,000 powerhouses that transfer energy, and much, much more. Scientists aren't exactly sure how the nucleated cell was formed, but one thing is certain. Thousands of components in this little city are working in perfect harmony, and they appear to be sharing a form of collective consciousness. So, evolution continues, and about 600 million years ago, the nucleated cell begins to come together and form a multicellular organism, like plants and animals. Now, they have trillions of nucleated cells that weren't just cooperating. They shared a collective consciousness and became incredible things like sea sponges and frogs and Venus flytraps and tree-dwelling mammals and amphibians and dinosaurs. And eventually, about 200,000 years ago, our species began to evolve. Now, in a relatively short time, we found tons of ways to communicate, to cooperate, to trade with each other, but also to wage wars and destroy the planet. So what is the next stage of human evolution? Well, if we look at 4 billion years of history, we can see a pattern. Individual things connect and they form collectives that enable the emergence of a higher level of consciousness. Now, thousands of years ago, Kabbalists described something that's strikingly similar. They describe humanity as a single collective soul, an emergent state that we're all part of, and they call it the soul of Adam Harishon. In this soul, all the pieces work together in perfect harmony. They give each individual the ability to realize its full potential, both for itself and for the whole. So, if our emergent state is a state of collective consciousness, where we feel and act as one harmonious entity, why does it look like we're so far from this state, living in a world that's filled with chaos, crisis, destruction? Stay tuned to find out.
Okay, so first of all, I hope you enjoyed that video. And this entire video, this entire session. And if you did, I want to ask you for a small favor. We put a lot of time and effort and money and investment of our desires, of our hearts, to make this wisdom available and accessible to everyone. If you enjoy it, just click the like button, click the share button, and make it available to more people. Okay, done with that. Back to the topic. So, what's happening here is an incredible process, and if you look at what started 4.3 billion years ago, then it becomes clear what's happening today. And that's also how I ended the clip, what's happening today? Why is everything broken, shattered? And the answer to that is the same answer why so many people are awakening today. The answer to that is the same answer to the question, why is depression on the rise constantly? Well, during COVID, it tripled, but even before COVID, it went up like 20% a year. And interestingly, it went up in developed countries as well, in the United States, in Australia, Finland. All these three are among the top 10 countries with depression in the world, countries that seemingly have everything. And it's the same on the personal level. People that seemingly have everything many times reach this state of depression. And the cause of that is that inner sensation that no matter what fulfillment you have in this world, it's not doing the job. And that can also explain why so many of those, top celebrities, like we mentioned before, Madonna, Ashton Kutcher, Britney Spears, whoever, Gwyneth Paltrow, who else was there? Ariana Grande. Well, I don't really know if they study Kabbalah, but according to the media they do, so let's play with that. So, what are they lacking? What are they lacking in their lives? They seemingly have everything, and more than everything, what people dream of, what kids want to be when they grow up. They have it. They have it all. And the same reason that they come to the wisdom of Kabbalah is actually the same reason that so many people today are awakening for this method. It's because we're facing a new level of human emergence. Our previous forms of fulfillment are beginning to transform, meaning many of us in the system, not all of us, I'm not talking about all human beings in the world, but many human beings, and the numbers are growing and growing, are not satisfied by what this world has to offer alone. Not that it's bad, not that this world has bad things in it, I mean it does, but there are also good things, and people find fulfillment in them as well, and that's fine, but it's not enough. And what's actually happening here is that same system called the soul of Adam Harishon, this system here, it's starting to awaken. So imagine that, can I draw here? Yes. Yeah, you see it? Okay. Okay. I can draw, but I can't erase. Maybe I can do that. Okay, good. Ooh, sorry about that. Okay. All right, so this entire system, which is called the soul of Adam Harishon, this is a collective system of 8 billion souls, right? All of the people in humanity. And although the people in humanity, they're currently not in this state, they're currently in a very different state. They're in a state of separation and isolation. But the state that we need to reach as humanity, as a collective, is this state here, is this state of the soul of Adam Harishon. And all of these 4.3 billion years of evolution are leading us towards that state. And what is that state? It is a state of all of humanity connected on a higher level. Because today, we're not connected. If you look at humanity and you look at nature, you see different things. You see that nature works like a single organism, right? Even though, a lion devours its prey, they all work in harmony, the entire system. And only human beings are separate of that system and are working in complete lack of harmony. And what is this harmony that's lacking here? It is just like those prokaryotes, those single-cellular organisms which started collaborating after they started fighting for resources, of course. They started collaborating. It wasn't until they formed this new level of connection, and not just a level of, I'll give this to you, you give this to me. That's the beginning, but it's not what leads to emergence. When they actually became like a system, that's when a new level emerged. And that's exactly what we're facing today. The entire system is awakening. So this could be you, and this could be you, and this is someone else, and we're all here together. And from our awakening, we're beginning to send these ripple effects into the entire system to awaken the whole system. So, no pressure there on your role in the awakening of all of humanity. But yes, if you're here, if you feel this, then you also are part of the process of the awakening of everyone. But like I said, no pressure. Okay, let's take a quick break for a few questions. I see a lot of them, and great ones too. Okay. Wow. I have like a few pages here of questions. Let's see. Okay, Mark Terrell is asking a practical question, and I respect that. Beyond understanding what is going on and talking about it, what does Kabbalah actually have to offer in a practical sense? Great question, and here's the answer. Kabbalah offers a method that enables you to build an internal device to connect to the hidden forces of nature. Now, it sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple, because that hidden device, it exists in connection between people. not just in connection between anyone, because you can even have a group of robbers who go to rob a bank and they're also connected, but specifically in a group of people that want to discover this force, just like the authors of the Book of Zohar, who connected together to form this spiritual connection. They discovered this force within them. Similarly, we can do the same thing. And the practicality of Kabbalah is, to put it simply, is building, well, I want to say positive social connection, but it's not enough just positive social connection, because there are so many groups today that talk about that. It's building positive social connection with a spiritual intention. And that's the practicality of Kabbalah. If you want to know exactly how it's implemented, then you should go and study. So Rachel will post a link to taboo, which is our online learning platform. You can try out for a 14-day free trial, and you can also, by being in taboo, you can join our taboo Zoom sessions that we hold right after this, starting in 5 minutes actually. So I hope you find what you're looking for, Mark. Okay. Let's see what else. So Sharon, hi Sharon. Sharon's asking, we're evolving to a higher realm of consciousness. Yes, exactly, that's what we're doing, to a higher realm of consciousness, which is through connecting to a system of forces that are currently concealed to us. And this higher realm of consciousness is actually done through this conscious, that's the word, conscious evolution. It's not a process that's just going to happen to us. It's a process that we have to actively be part of. We have to evolve. No one's going to push us to evolve. Okay? Let's see what else. Eddie, and maybe we'll take that as the last question. Wait a minute, it's actually not a question. Okay, last question. Jetsa is asking, are there still parts of Kabbalah that are a secret? The answer is, all of Kabbalah is hidden, but the only thing that preventing you from revealing it is you. Everything is available to you. So until you discover it for yourself, then all of Kabbalah is a secret. And that's why Kabbalists say you shouldn't believe anyone or follow with blind faith. Instead, you should listen to your heart, but then you should seek to find it yourself. And nothing less than finding it yourself should satisfy you. So I hope you all enjoyed the session today, and I hope that all of you who are searching to find it, find it. And I enjoyed being here as usual. So again, if you like the session, then please click the like button and share it if you can. That would be awesome. And that's it for today. So I'm Gil Shear. This was Kabbalah Explained Simply. And today we spoke about why Kabbalah is being revealed today. Why is it going mainstream? So thank you all, and I'll see the Kabbalah students on Zoom in a couple of minutes for the follow-up Q&A session on Zoom. And the rest of you, see you guys next week.